All right, welcome to the Young Turks, isn't it? Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys on a potentially lovely Thursday evening.
Potentially.
Potentially, okay?
Depends on whether you're gonna behave and whether I'm gonna be nice to you.
Okay.
That's gonna be the determinant of whether or not it's gonna be a lovely afternoon.
Well, at least for some of us, okay? And so,
I'm feeling feisty today. Get ready, guys.
Today, only today though. Act quickly. You'll never get like this feisty again until tomorrow. Anyways, but we don't mind you acting right now. tyt.com/join, become a member. Okay, seriously, guys, we make a lot of big ones. We make a lot of little ones, serious ones, fun ones. Those are news items. We have them all. Go.
Well, today at the very top of the show, we have Shawn Fain, the head of the UAW, making an appearance. So let's get right to it.
Could have considered Donald Trump. You did not. Why not?
Well, I mean, if you look at just the facts and the body of work of both candidates, and both of them in their own words, nowhere in history has Donald Trump ever stood for the American worker. He stands against pretty much everything that we stand for.
After holding out for months, the United Auto Workers has officially endorsed President Joe Biden for re-election. And you just heard from UAW President Shawn Fain, who came with lots of receipts to help explain why it makes sense for the union to choose Biden over Trump. Let's take a look.
President Biden stood there with us on the picket line, unlike President Trump back in 19 when GM was on strike for 40 days and he was completely non-existent and silent on the issue. I can go down through the list of things, the difference in the candidates, but it's very clear to us who stands with working class people in this country and who stands against them. In 2008, 2009, the economic recession, Donald Trump blamed the workers for what was wrong with these companies. In 2015, he talked about doing a rotation of good paying jobs in the Midwest, somewhere where they pay less and have people begging for their jobs back at lower wages. In 19, also in 15, when Volkswagen workers voted to organize, he put an NLRB in place that killed the organizing, the contract for those workers. In 19, when he was president, he didn't support the strike. He told workers at Lordstown Assembly Plant, which was closing, don't sell your houses, and then he did nothing to support them. Versus President Biden, who in 2023, when a plant was going to close in Belvedere, Illinois for Stellantis, he stood with those workers. He helped us save a community and helped bring not one plant, but two plants back to life. And he stood with our members on the picket line in our fight for economic justice.
Now, that was quite a long list of reasons why he chose to endorse Biden over Donald Trump, but he did hold out. The UAW did hold out. And look, for the purposes of a friendlier, pro-labor administration, I believe it makes sense for the UAW to endorse Biden over Trump. There's also the option of not endorsing anyone, but I think that there were some conversations that were had, behind closed doors. Biden was willing to work with the UAW in regard to EV vehicles and how it would impact the jobs that they do. So it is fair to say that Biden is far more friendly to labor compared to Trump. I know that that's shocking to some MAGA supporters who have completely bought into Trump's phony populist rhetoric about workers. But the fact of the matter is he hasn't really delivered for average workers in this country or any workers in this country. He has succeeded in securing tax cuts for the rich, though. Yeah.
I don't think this is even close.
Right.
I don't even know why this would be a conversation. Look, I think that Sean O'Brien, who's the leader of the Teamsters, and Shawn Fain are doing a good job in holding their power and their leverage and then using it at the right time. Sean O'Brien interviewed or met with almost all of the candidates on the Democratic and Republican side. I think that's a smart thing to do. Fain didn't bother meeting with Trump, but why? Because of his track record. His track record is not unclear. So we get frustrated with Biden, and the Democrats. So they'll always say that they're going to pass some sort of major pro-union legislation like the PRO Act. They never do anything about it. They barely even propose it. Obama did nothing, Biden did nothing. So there's plenty of things to get frustrated with Biden about, but there's also upsides for Biden with labor. The National Labor Relations Board is terrific. He did go on the picket line a couple of times. He did help the striking rail workers behind the scenes after the strike, et cetera. So there's at least some significant positives on the Biden side. On the Trump side, it's nothing but a giant list of negatives.
Also,
look, okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Cenk, but also you have to think about what the priority is for the leader of the United Auto Workers, and it's labor. That is the top issue. That is what matters. That is the top priority. So I see some people online on the left attacking Shawn Fain. He called for a ceasefire. The UAW called for a ceasefire in Gaza back in December. So they are on the right side in regard to the war on Gaza. However, the Biden administration's handling of the war was not the top priority in making this endorsement. The top priority is which administration is going to be best for labor, because that's our top priority.
Again, not close. Guys, anybody that watches this show or any other show that I've been on knows I couldn't be more in favor of Palestinian rights and ending this war and ending the occupation. But we can do several things at the same time. This brother went out of his way to try to help the Palestinians, but that's not his main job. It's not even close to his main job. His main job is to look out for union members in UAW. And so in doing that, that one is not close. So back to Trump, he has never done anything for workers. So every time there's a strike, he sides with the companies, the giant corporations, and not the people. He doesn't even think there should be a minimum wage. He's on the record as saying that. The lower your wages are, the happier he is. Guess why? He's one of the elites. So here's what MAGA never understood. Trump always wanted to be in the club, but they always thought he was a loser, before he got into politics. And so that always got under his skin, and that's part of why he hated the elites. Not because he didn't want to be part of them, but because he wanted to be part of them so badly. And remember, MAGA guys, still pretend that Trump's a billionaire. I mean, nobody thinks that in reality, but the MAGA guys do, and Trump says he's a billionaire. So, and certainly he owns a lot of businesses. He's driven a lot of them into the ground and bankrupted them, but he still has the Trump Organization, et cetera. And there he wants wages as low as possible. Remember, for a long time in construction and real estate, Donald Trump used undocumented workers at all of his sites. He's like, why would I pay an American when I could just pay lower? You know how Trump is. He doesn't want to pay high, he wants to pay as low as humanly possible for American workers and sometimes non-American workers. His golf courses were filled with undocumented immigrants.
Right.
So this guy is terrible on labor, awful. So I just don't see this as an interesting question or conversation. Of course, UAW should endorse Joe Biden between those two candidates. And right now, realistically, it looks like it's between those two candidates.
I want to go to, one more video, because during a speech before the unionized UAW workers, Shawn Fain had some harsh words for Donald Trump, and I thought it was fun. It was certainly a little more lively than what you saw on Fox News. So let's take a look at that.
Donald Trump is a scab. Donald Trump is a billionaire, and that's who he represents. If Donald Trump ever worked in an auto plant, he wouldn't be a UAW member. He'd be a company man trying to squeeze the American worker.
True. Absolutely true. So I love the energy there. I love to see it. And who knows? I mean, with Shawn Fain spreading this real message about the anti-labor characteristics of Donald Trump, maybe some who support Trump will dig a little deeper to see if it's true. Maybe fact check Shawn Fain and realize, oh, that's actually right. Trump was not so friendly toward labor. The other thing I wanted to just quickly mention, because I think it's important. Again, bringing up the discontent among the left toward Joe Biden and his support for Israel's war on Gaza. It is true that there are UAW workers who feel the same way. And so during that UAW conference, Joe Biden appeared and he gave his own speech. The speech was interrupted many, many times by UAW workers who are also pro-Palestinian protesters. So I wanted to give you a little taste of that. And I want to be clear, the people protesting are also UAW workers. In other videos, you'll hear others basically say 4 more years in support of Joe Biden. So I wanted to give you that proper context, but without further ado, here's what happened. So you hear some people saying UAW to kind of drown out the protesters. And look, the fact of the matter is when it comes to workers, especially when it comes to UAW workers, we're talking about a lot of people. There are gonna be differences in political opinion. And if you take a look at the breakdown in who the UAW workers have voted for in the past, the UAW's membership base is not a political monolith, right? About 1/3 of its members voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020, and that's according to the union's internal polling. So the real trick, and I think the most difficult thing to do when it comes to being a union leader, is ensuring that all of your workers feel connected to one another and that they prioritize being, part of labor. Who look out for one another as opposed to tearing each other down over, some political differences, which of course are gonna happen. And I love that.
Yeah, so first of all, I was gonna bring up that 1/3 stat too, because when you see Sean Fain, I think 2 things. One, this brother's not for the faint of heart.
Nailed it.
No, I love his energy, right? And I love his clarity. He just, I don't think it's that hard, but apparently a lot of people in public life struggle with being able to make a clear case. He just listed things one after another of what Trump did wrong. We showed it to you earlier. He does it many times. And so the reason why that's so important is because number one, he's making a better case for Biden than Biden ever has. Like, I've never seen Biden make a quarter of the case that Sean Fain made against Donald Trump. Biden barely talks, barely campaigns. So when you see someone like Sean Fain making the case for Biden, you're like, wow, that's actually pretty good, right? And so he should be all over the campaign trail if he wants to and they want to have him. But number 2 is really important. He's got credibility with American workers because he just delivered great results. He got them higher wages, he got them all these things that he wanted. And yes, he got it specifically for the UAW workers, but all American workers saw with our own eyes that he delivered. And I'm sure that a lot of people thought, I wish I had a guy like that fighting for me at work.
Well,
right?
Other car companies, in response to UAW workers securing a better contract, ended up experiencing an increase in their own wages, even if they're not unionized, even if they're not part of UAW.
Yeah, so when a guy like that who has delivered comes and says, Trump's not the guy, and here's why, a lot more people listen. And so 1/3 of those guys that voted for Trump, if I told them, hey, Trump's bad, they might not listen as much.
They definitely would not listen.
Well, but they would listen to me more than they would listen to an average Democrat because at least I'm honest and I criticize Democrats as well, so they can tell when someone's honest. But Sean Fain's got the honesty, the hard-hitting stuff that I think that Anna and I have, but he also has the credibility of having delivered for these same guys.
Absolutely.
And made their lives materially better, and I think they all recognize that. So when he says Trump's a bad guy, they're much more likely to listen to him. So this is important in more ways than one. In the old days when the unions did endorsements, it was always rubber stamp, Democrat, and no one cared, no one paid attention, and they never made a good case. They never affected anyone.
True.
Here we're dealing with a completely different scenario with Sean O'Brien and Sean Fain that I think could make a big difference in this election.
Well, let's switch gears to something entirely different because the State Department has been struggling during their press conferences, and what you're about to witness is no exception.
You may have had the chance to see some of the footage shot by our cameraman in the Gaza Strip, widely shared online, showing a group of men waving a white flag, representing no threat whatsoever, unarmed, and moving south to try and reach some relatives. The IDF opened fire, as you can see on that video, and killed one of them.
Well, the State Department has really had a rough go at things during their press conferences as journalists actually decide to ask some pretty tough questions in regard to the United States support for Israel, even as IDF soldiers are caught on camera committing war crimes. Now, during a recent State Department press conference, you have the deputy spokesperson, his name is Vedant Patel, basically confronted by not one, not two, but three different reporters who had some pretty hard-hitting questions, and they specifically wanted to know what the State Department had to say about recent footage that was shot by a UK outlet known as ITV News, showing the IDF shooting and killing an innocent Palestinian who was waving a white flag. And if you're unfamiliar with that story or that incident, we did cover it this week, but we do have the video ready so you can see what we're talking about. It is difficult to watch, but here it is.
These pictures were filmed by a cameraman working for ITV News in Gaza. As he moved forwards towards the combat zone, he noticed this group of men doing their utmost to appear non-threatening, trying to proceed with care. They wanted to reach two other family members and get them out of harm's way.
عند الحجة واخويا وعنده حوالي 50 نازح او 70 نازح موجودين في البيت الثاني اللي يخش علينا لو طلعونا واخويا ما طلعوش بدنا نروح يعني نطلع ان شاء الله.
The interview complete, our cameraman walked away. And then this happened. The interviewee had been shot and fatally wounded. You can see them place their flag on his chest. As he was carried away, the white flag was turning red.
All right, that is a difficult video to watch, especially since you literally see him in his final moments speaking to reporters with ITV News, and then the IDF decides to kill him. Anyway, the IDF alleges that ITV edited the footage. There's no evidence of any editing. We all saw what happened. The fact that the IDF carries out these types of war crimes, knowing that there's a cameraman there, by the way, is amazing and shows you how brazen some of these attacks are. And we'll hear from the State Department on what they think about that incident. Not good, but do you want to jump in on that, Cenk, before we do?
Yeah, I do. So, guys, if you still believe that Israel is trying their utmost not to kill civilians, but golly gee, they just happened to kill 25,500 of them, which is more than 1% of the entire population of Gaza, wounded 63,000, whether it's Israeli hostages or Palestinian civilians that hold up white flags, get murdered on the spot, no questions asked. You think that's all still an accident? No, if you're in the very small group of people who still think that, you're so biased you can't see straight. No one else on earth thinks that. So IDF and the American government can do all the propaganda they want, but we all have eyes, we all have ears. We see these guys getting murdered, yes, murdered on a daily basis. And yes, Netanyahu's government has done 20 times the terrorism of Hamas by murdering those civilians in Gaza.
Now, it's notable that Patel did not say at any point during this press conference that the footage might have been edited. So apparently he didn't touch base with the IDF to make sure that they have their talking points straight. But he did try to avoid having to answer any questions about it with this weak excuse. Let's watch.
I am not going to comment on the specifics around that, given I'm not aware of the full circumstances on the ground. And as we've said before, this is not an American operation. I'm just going to refrain from commenting on specific operations, as we do not have full circumstances of what on the ground from here. This isn't an American operation. I'm not on the ground there to speak to the full parameters of the situation.
I don't know. I mean, look, if I recall correctly, and I could be mistaken, I might have been hallucinating, maybe this didn't happen. But if I recall correctly, Cenk, when it came to war crimes carried out by our enemies or adversaries, people like Vladimir Putin, for instance, seems like the State Department has no problem discussing and openly talking about those war crimes, even without our troops being on the ground, even without the United States being, on the ground involved in that war, other than, of course, supporting Ukraine militarily.
Yeah, that's a great point, Anna. And also without 100% confirmation. So when the Russians do something in Ukraine, we call them out instantaneously. We don't go, hey, we need a couple of weeks and we need to check with the Russian government and make sure that they're okay with us telling you what actually happened. And then after we get their permission, we'll come back to you guys. It never said in the case of the Russian government. Honestly, not said that often for even allies. So Turkey's a huge ally, second largest army in NATO, and they do plenty of things wrong. And the American government usually calls them out right away, right? But as we all know, and if you're pretending that Israel does not have a special exception for every rule, you're so blinded by bias you can't see straight. We all have eyes. So this guy, he's in an unenviable position. We all get it, right? He's not the one that came up with the policy. Having said that, the reporters did a great job, 3 different reporters pressing him about half a dozen times to answer the damn question. So did you check with the Israelis or didn't you? What did they say? What didn't they say? Etc. And he never answers any of the questions because his job as a representative of the US government is to kiss Israel's ass and to never tell you the truth about what they're doing and to evade all responsibility. So he'll do that the next day and the day after that. He'll never come out and say, oh yeah, by the way, of course, I watched the video, we all watched the video, obviously they murdered him, obviously. And then if you ask them and they do, the second follow-up question, that's even more unanswerable. Yes, but what are you going to do about it? Are you going to do anything about it? We're the ones giving them $4 billion a year. We want to give them an extra $14 billion now. Joe Biden gave them $250 million without even asking Congress. So are you going to do anything about Israel constantly murdering civilians? And the answer is hell no. Now he doesn't want to say that on tape, but that has been 100% the reality. So he has to go out there and evade and look like a schmuck who's obviously a liar, which is exactly what the government asked him to do.
Yeah, what a terrible job. I would hate to provide cover for what's currently transpiring in Gaza. Now, let's cue up B5 because I do want to give a lot of credit to these reporters for asking the types of questions they're asking, namely when it comes to alleged war crimes that are being committed by the Israeli government and the IDF. So let's hear how he answered that question.
Did you actually reach out specifically to Israel about this footage and try to get whatever the facts that you guys are seeking?
This footage just arrived earlier this morning, so I don't have any specifics of our diplomatic conversations around this to speak to.
How about the footage that arose last week and the week before and the week before and the week before and the week before, where there have been, if not similar, awfully close instances? Have you ever gotten an explanation from the Israelis? Have you ever gotten a finding from the Israelis of what their investigation, if they promised one?
I'm not going to speak to private diplomatic conversations, Matt, but this is something that we raise continuously with the Israelis. The secretary has done so, other officials in our government have done so, and will continue to do it.
Okay, well, have you ever gotten an answer from the Israelis?
I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna speak to the privacy of certain diplomatic conversations, Matt. But we have been clear that there is a moral and strategic imperative to take as many steps as possible to minimize civilian casualties.
That's fine.
So 2 points I want to just make, and then I'll toss it over to you, Cenk. Number one, I don't know what the point of these press conferences are if they're not going to answer any questions. And if they're just going to deflect or say that they're unable to talk about closed door meetings or diplomatic conversations, okay, then this is a useless meeting with you. There's no point in hearing anything you have to say because you're not saying anything at all. The other point I want to make is I think Israel has finally managed to accomplish something that I didn't think was possible. Their handling of the war on Gaza is so unbearably difficult to stomach that journalists, either they have no choice, but they feel compelled to ask the types of questions they're asking during these press conferences. This is not something that was indicative of press conferences having to do with Israel in the past. It just wasn't. Everyone they towed the line, they went along with the US's undying, devoted, unmitigated support for Israel, and then they called it a day. And things have changed, and it's because you can't deny the footage that's coming out of the Gaza Strip. You can't deny how many innocent civilians have died. You can't deny the weird double standard in which, one side chanting, from the river to the sea is considered genocidal terrorists, and the Israeli government saying that is totally fine. That hypocrisy, that double standard is so obvious. So, you saw the reporters who asked those questions, Cenk. They're not some young whippersnapper, woke, reporters from the New York Times. They're seasoned journalists who are like, I don't know, man. Looks like an innocent person was just shot and killed even as he was waving a white flag.
Yeah, and look, and in mainstream media, now this is Associated Press and Reuters, some of these reporters, and they're usually the best of the lot. The print journalists are usually better than the TV guys, et cetera. And the New York Times, Washington Post have been pretty good on this issue relative to their past coverage, right? And so it's damning with faint praise a little bit, but these guys are usually a little bit better, but they're still not overall not well known for grilling the American government. They usually accept whatever the hell the American government says and put it in the paper as if it's real. Here, I think Anna's 100% right, where people are like, look guys, this is insulting to our intelligence. We see the video clear as day, and you keep telling us that it's not a big deal and the Israelis don't kill civilians. It's now beyond absurd. We can't even contain ourselves anymore. So journalism is breaking out because they just can't help it. And so now look, last things here. In terms of his answers, we raise these questions, he said, over and over again with our Israeli partners. Yes, but do they ever answer them? And the answer is no, they don't. They go, who do you think you are? No, we're in charge. Shut up and tell the reporters that we're awesome and that the innocent people we killed are terrorists. Shut up, Patel, and get out there and tell them that. And he does, because that's his job. So now, in terms of humiliation, I mean, you see what the Palestinians live with. But now it's gotten to the point where this war has become humiliating for Americans. 100%,
yes.
Because now we look like we're the gimp that they're trotting out here, and this poor guy, Patel, comes out there and he's like, it's almost like he's got that mask on, and he's like, yes, Israel is always right. I mean, I don't have eyes. I saw the video, but I can't tell if he's dead. I can't tell if he's a civilian. I can't tell anything. What else should I say, Israel? What else should I say?
But aside from
humiliating.
That, it is
humiliating.
But aside from that, aside from this one press conference, it's the repeated headlines about how the Biden administration is urging Netanyahu to do targeted strikes, urging Netanyahu to do more to protect the lives of Palestinian civilians. And then the follow-up statements from Netanyahu himself or other members of the Israeli government essentially saying, no, we're gonna do it. We're gonna intensify our operations. That's what's happened now several times, where you'll hear, either Kirby or Anthony Blinken saying, okay, they're getting ready to pivot to a low intensity stage of the war. And then what does Israel do immediately after that? They intensify their military operations. Lately, it's been in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Yeah, that is humiliating for the American government and honestly, the American people. Are we okay with this? Because we're funding this. We're offering the military weaponry, the 2,000-pound bombs for the Israeli government and the IDF to carry this out. Are we okay with that? I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, so last thing here is that there's a Trump analogy here. Netanyahu is treating Biden like Trump treats Tim Scott.
Totally.
And in the old days, Chris Christie and all these guys, Lindsey Graham, that he humiliates ritualistically. He points to them and goes, now come here. To betray the people that got you here, say nice things about me, and then he'll look at them and he'll make fun of them, right? And that's how Netanyahu is treating Biden. So Biden goes, oh, we're trying to get them to show restraint. Netanyahu comes out and goes, I'm not gonna show any restraint, and I'm not gonna do the two-state solution, and there's nothing Biden can do about it. And Biden's like, it's pathetic. And as an American, I feel humiliated watching our president grovel at the feet of a tiny little country that we are funding. It makes it like if you came out from outer space and you saw this dynamic, you'd think, oh my God, well, to be fair, America's probably getting 40 billion or 400 billion or 4 trillion from Israel, and they have to act like they're their proxy state. No, we're giving them money.
Yep.
Except, let's be honest, guys. They're taking our money and giving it to Israel, but the Israeli lobby is giving money to our politicians. So those are bribes. AIPAC bribes Joe Biden, let's be honest. Democratic Majority for Israel has bribed a lot of Democrats, and AIPAC bribes tons of Republicans. So if you say, oh no, ExxonMobil doing campaign donation, that's a bribe. That's corruption. But AIPAC doing it, well, they're angels. God, come on, no one believes that.
Don't forget the weapons manufacturers too, right?
Yes.
Because we give the money to Israel. And by the way, they talk about this when they hear people like us criticize the money we're giving to Israel. I've heard government officials say, well, they're complaining about that, but that money goes right back to the United States. You know what they mean when they say that, right? That money goes into the pockets of military contractors, weapons manufacturers. Military contractors, that's exactly where the money goes. And they talk about that as if it somehow benefits the American people. It doesn't benefit the American people. And as we speak, we're getting dragged into a broader regional war. You have bombings happening in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen. This is a disaster.
Yeah, once the Supreme Court legalized bribes in America, of course everybody was gonna bribe American politicians, including corporations who depend on American politicians for their profits. They'd be nuts not to bribe them. But the problem is when defense contractors bribe American politicians, people die.
Yep.
What they want is for them to sell billions of dollars in military equipment to murder people. And they don't care who, they don't care why. They just want to sell the weapons to kill more people. And they paid these tiny little legalized bribes to sellouts like Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and whoever else takes them, which is almost all of them. But the press, they did a great job in this case. But normally, you ask the press, ask the politicians about legalized bribes. Oh, no way, no way. They all pretend like defense contractors have no power. That Biden and all the other politicians are just making political decisions based on their ideology. No, they're making the decisions based on the number and amount of bribes they have taken, period.
When we come back from the break, we'll give you an update on the 18-year-old Israeli who refused to serve in the IDF. He was sentenced to time behind bars, but guess what? They decided to give him yet another sentence, so he's gonna spend more time in military detention. That and more coming up when we return.
Some programming notes. We're on Apple Podcasting now. Check out apple.co/TYT. Boom, there it is. A picture I don't love, but that's okay. Go to Apple Podcasting, check out TYT. Now, Michael Schur's been interviewing Trump supporters, and boy, they've got some interesting things to say. So if you're on youtube.com/theyoungturks, check those out, including one person who said that we should go back to public hangings. And you're gonna be shocked to find out, they thought that the first person who should be hung is Joe Biden. So openly talking about murdering the president, that's just become normal now in MAGA. So, and you know what, another great thing about that is that Michael and the folks we send over there, they get to talk to all these folks. So they see some of the things that you don't normally see in mainstream media, so like people worried about corruption, having legitimate concerns in MAGA. But then you also see them say things that are unconscionable over and over and over again. I asked them to keep count on how they're asking the question, would you prefer Trump as dictator or Biden as president? And we guessed ahead of time what they would say. I said 7 out of 10. Zephyr, who shoots those, said 5 out of 10. It turned out it was 10 out of 10. They all prefer Trump as dictator. That's just reality. Okay, now remember, those are the guys specifically going to Trump rallies, not necessarily the average Republican. Nikki Haley got like 44 points in New Hampshire. All right, Teddy Cool writes in, dynamic duo, the two best hosts in news media. Thank you, Teddy, you're awesome. And then he wrote in again saying, also nice haircut, Cenk. Look, I don't want to say it, but people are talking. Cenk's left tricep or fury wrote in, lots of comments on this slick haircut tonight, Cenk. And he added, people are talking. There it is, there it is. There's a conversation about how slick my haircut is. Look, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. My job is to report the news. Okay, Creative Dragon writes in, I fully expect Sean Fain will lead a true populist movement in 2028. He is smart and effective. That would be interesting, and that would be lovely. So hang in there for that. We can all hope. Trump's Lady Lump says, the eyes and faces of the Palestinians in these videos remind me of death camp survivors. They look terrified and hopeless. Who can blame them, guys, right? I mean, Jesus.
He was trying to get his mother and brother.
Yeah, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, John Kelly, who upgraded. You could either join or upgrade through the join button below the video on YouTube. John, thank you, brother. Those upgrades are essential to keeping us in business, and we appreciate you. More people we appreciate. Benjamin Webster and Box gifted a membership on YouTube. J Bomb Dragon gifted 5. Chris Birch and the Progressive Moose gifted 10 apiece. You guys are amazing. You're American heroes. We appreciate you. And Progressive Moose said he's celebrating their 30th month of membership, and that's why they gave the gift of membership to others, which is lovely.
Go nuts, read a bunch of comments. We gotta take a break in 2 minutes, so let's just do that.
In 2 minutes? No.
Yeah, just do it so we can be on time. Let's just take that break.
Okay,
go ahead,
all
go
right.
nuts, go nuts.
I'm going nuts, guys, here we go. Time for you guys to weigh in. So let's go to our YouTube members. Kristen Eckert says, Cenk with his new haircut, we see you, yummy. Look, Burgundy will read anything in the iPad. Okay, I'm just keeping it real, okay? David Rotondo said, Haley calls herself a union buster. If you're confused as to who's for the average American worker, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, that means you don't follow politics at all. And so-
The Democratic Party, by the way, like barely in favor of the average worker.
But
barely.
That's
but like, at least you got that.
Yeah. So I would say the Democrats are about 20% helping the average American worker, and the Republicans are approximately 0%. But hey, if you need a giant tax cut for multinational corporations, Trump and the Republicans will deliver for you. Chris Birch says, great being around for 14 months on this account. Thank you, Cenk and Anna. Keep up the good work. Thank you, brother. Aces 8 says, UAW can help a lot in the Rust Belt states like Michigan.
True.
And that's true, and I wanted to also read that because part of the reason you're seeing so many protests break out in regards to Gaza and why Sean Fain spoke about it is because they're in Michigan, where there's a lot of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans. And I was just in Michigan, and tons of the Muslim Americans that I spoke to in Dearborn said, hey, my dad worked at an assembly line at GM, Ford, etc. And so they're huge into unions and into protecting Gaza, and that's why you're seeing that crossover there in Michigan, and that's a really interesting point. And now we go to our super chats. Michael Malbon writes in, quick update, UFCW Local 663 in Brainerd, Minnesota rejected management's laughable offer. Some people have been working without a contract for a few weeks now. I got the impression today that could be changing quickly. I wanted to read that because you spend good money on super chat to get out your news about your union. I love it, and I want to reward them. Plus, it's news, so thank you for sharing that news. Frank Rockefeller's are one of our resident conservatives, and he wrote in, corporate unions have to ingratiate themselves with political institutions for their lack of intrinsic merit and value results. Well, but Frank, I know that that's your standard conservative talking point, except in this case, UAW delivered spectacularly.
Yep.
So you can't say that they didn't deliver results and that they're just doing it because they lack intrinsic merit. Their merit was their workers are thrilled with the contract that they got them.
Yep.
So it's absurd. All right, we got more later. Let's take a quick break, guys, and we'll come back with important stories, including the person who is refusing to go to war in Israel, an Israeli, a conscientious objector, and you're gonna wanna hear from him. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, more comments. Look at this. This is like a comment extravaganza. So on Super Chat, I'm gonna go to Benjamin Morrill, who usually gifts a membership almost every day, but this time he wrote in, hey TYT team, still a member, but can't gift as often as I really want. My overtime dried up today, so a member, yes, gifting only sparingly. TYT needs to exist, dropping truth to America, love to the whole team. So the reason I read that, guys, is because Benjamin, we love you, brother. And so everybody make sure you're doing it based on your own conditions, right? So we needed here to keep everybody at work here and making sure that you guys have this fortress of what we hope is courageous reporting and truth and honesty. But at the same time, you gotta make sure you take care of yourself and your family. So if you're having tough times, definitely ease up. So, but we love you either way, Benjamin. So it's and we appreciate everyone who watches, no matter what. Dusty Miller with a wonderful comment, and I hope there's truth to it. He says, why does TYT telling me all the bad in the world make me feel so good? Look, I think it's because we're a community where we all care about other human beings. And so just sharing it with you guys in an honest way is so different than what other people do. And we have fights within the community, etc. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to do some good in the world and trying to bring some hope into the world. All right, Irving Kurlinski, these are now our YouTube members, say, good show, great reporting. Your frank clarity really helps make this a progressive channel. Thank you, Irving, appreciate it. Benjamin Webster says, reporter, did the US land on the moon? Spokesperson, I'm not going to comment because I wasn't there. That's really funny, Benjamin. T. Freeman writes in, our administration, quote, Israel has the right to defend itself against white flags.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to say something like that.
I wouldn't put it past them either, and that is a devastatingly good point, unfortunately. All right, now let's go to Twitch. Don Quixote gifted a sub. We appreciate you. Dave Schmidt 311 is one of the largest heroes in America. Gifted 2 more subs on Twitch, bringing him to 1,102 gifted subs. That is amazing, wow. Dave Schmidt. That is amazing. Thank you, brother. Skittlebutt Dragon Rasp writes in, as a longtime viewer and over 3 years sub on Twitch and gifter of nearly 200 subs to the channel, I feel compelled to explain why I will no longer donate subs to others. So look at me reading this. Today on an earlier program, a guest host denied the actions of Israel were a genocide. While I respect your choice to allow hosts to express their opinions, and I'm not asking for anyone to be fired, I cannot in good conscience support those opinions. So I read that because number one, you got every right to do whatever you think is right? And to put your money where you think it makes sense. So no problem, okay? At the same time, I would ask you, are you sure you could find any channel in America that has been more supportive of Palestinian rights and having honest conversations about what's actually happening in Gaza more than we have at TYT?
Also,
I'm not sure that one exists.
I know that you view it as punishing the person you disagree with, but it actually ends up punishing the people you agree with. But okay, I mean, it's your right.
But everybody's got the right to spend their money any way they want.
Exactly.
We'll be back. TYT, Cenk, Anna, news.
Well, we've got some updates for you.
I got sentenced for 30 days for my first sentencing, and I got another draft order for Monday morning, which means I have to get drafted on Monday morning, where I will go and refuse service once again and probably get sentenced again. And this will happen over and over until someone gives up, until the army gives me an exemption.
After spending a month in military prison for his conscientious objection to serving in the IDF, 18-year-old Tal Mitnick has been ordered to report for an additional month in detention. Now, first-time objectors tend to get about 10 days in detainment, but he's already set to serve at least 60 once the latest sentence is up. Now, here's the backstory. Mitnick entered the Tel Hashomer enlistment center in December with other members of a group that basically consists of young Israelis who are conscientious objectors. They do not want to serve in the IDF, and they do not agree with how the Israeli government has handled either the West Bank or the Gaza Strip. He announced his refusal to enlist in the IDF, citing the war on Gaza and Israel's, he said this, illegal occupation of Palestine. So for anyone who likes to lump in all Israelis or any group and treat them as a monolith, please don't do that. Treat people as individuals, because this is an 18-year-old who already served 30 days in military detention, and he's set to do another 30 days. Now, he said of his experience in military prison, once inside the military base last month, Mitnick presented the recruitment officer with his ID. I said, "No, I'm not doing this." I was yelled at, told I had no choice. I had to stand up for myself. He was not sent to, he was sent from commander to commander. To each of them, I said the same thing. I believe there is no military solution to this conflict. I'm a pacifist. For first-time refuseniks, as they're called, 7 to 10 days is a standard sanction. On December 26, Mitnick received 30 days to be spent at a prison just outside the town of Kfar Yona. And Tal Mitnick getting sent to military prison again after serving his first sentence has inspired other Israelis who don't agree with the IDF's military operations to also take a stand. And I want to give you another conscientious objector who has previously served 4 months in military prison over his refusal to serve in the IDF. Let's watch.
Eventually, I was brought in front of a commanding officer. The officer listed the charges. He said, "Well, you're not enlisting, right?" And I said, "Yep." And he said, "Well, I guess go to prison for a week." I was like, okay. I went to prison. I was in prison for a week. Israeli military prison, not civilian prison. And then once you leave prison, once your sentence ends, you get another letter commanding you to show up 24 hours later to enlist in the military. So I had to show up again and say, I'm not enlisting this time either. And they said, okay, go back to prison. Basically, that song and the dance lasted for about 4 months.
So as soon as you serve your first sentence, they try to basically send you to Gaza again. If you refuse to do it, you get another sentence. And so it's like a vicious cycle of, refusing, getting a new sentence, getting out, refusing again, getting a new sentence, and then getting out. And just going back to Tal Mitnick real quick, because I thought that this quote from him was pretty powerful. He said, quote, "My refusal is an attempt to influence Israeli society and to avoid taking part in the occupation and the massacre happening in Gaza. I'm trying to say that it's not in my name. I express solidarity with the innocent in Gaza. I know they want to live." I just think it's incredibly brave, and I think of myself when I was 18 years old. I don't know if I would have the courage to do what these young Israelis are doing, but I think they do deserve credit for this. Some people are kind of minimizing it as, well, this is the bare minimum they can do. But you also have to understand what Israeli society is like, especially right now following the atrocities that were committed on October 7th. These are young Israelis who have lost friends, support from some family members. They're made pariahs over their decision. And so again, I do believe they deserve credit, because imagine the pressure that they've been under and their refusal to cave to that pressure.
Yeah, I don't know who's saying that they're doing the bare minimum, but that's insane. No, It's not your context, guys. It's the context that they grew up in and they live in. And so within that context, they're totally heroes. I mean, yeah, it's not just that they have to go to prison for it, which is significant enough as it is, but it's also the pressure that exists in society. And so, look, I think that part is crystal clear, but I also want to point out how smart these guys are, because Tal says, so look, we did 70 years of occupation. Does it look like it's getting us anywhere? Does it look like we're safer? No, it's ridiculous. Clearly, it's not working. So it's not just because I don't want to kill innocent Palestinians and that we shouldn't do that. It's also not good for Israel's security. The more we occupy, and he said on October 7th, we found out that it shook us out of our complacency. Oh, we could just keep occupying them forever and nothing's ever gonna happen to us. We're just brutalizing them, but we're safe. No, we're not safe either. Why would we be safe when we continue to imprison these people? Do you think they're never gonna fight back? So both brave and smart, no question about it. And then I wanna tell you guys, so he has to go to prison, Tal does, and the other person that we showed you guys, because they're honest. And now, people who claim a religious exemption, which exists in Israel, mainly ultra-Orthodox Jews, they say, well, no, that's okay, I don't have to go. Now, ultra-Orthodox Jews are also the most conservative right-wing members. Generally speaking, not every one of them, of course, no, there's no monolith, but as a group, they're the biggest part of the settlers, the most right-wing. They go, we want you to die for us, but we're not going. And we want you to die for our settlements, and we want to be able to shoot Palestinians whenever we want. We want no culpability or responsibility, but we don't want to fight. We don't want to risk ourselves. We want kids like Tal to die for us.
That sounds pretty American, actually.
Yeah.
That sounds like our government, to be honest, right? Sending young men and women in our military to fight needless wars that obviously risk their lives, and if they make it out alive, they deal with all sorts of mental trauma and PTSD that they don't get the proper support and care for.
Yeah, I have no sympathy for religious fundamentalist nut jobs who go say, hey, murder other people on my behalf, whether they're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or otherwise. But I don't want it. I don't want to risk my life, and I don't want to pay anything. And a lot of times these guys don't even pay taxes. I don't care about your ridiculous, nonsense, lunatic version of religion. Like, that to me is not at all compelling. Oh, because you said some mythical creature told you to kill Palestinians and not serve, to force others to go kill them on your behalf, I have to listen to you? No, I don't. If Israel was consistent at all, they would put all of those ultra-Orthodox Jews in jail for not serving in the IDF, just as they're putting this wonderful, decent human being in jail. So I think that these guys are awesome. And guys, last thing, this is super important. About 35% of Israelis at this point are saying, let's go towards peace, two-state solution. Now, that's not enough. We got to get to 51%, okay? But now, finally, there's a little bit of trajectory in that direction. And I saw all the interviews that Tal did, and one of the things that he's saying is, look, guys, now there's two options. One is just kill them for the rest of the time. And unfortunately, a lot of Israelis are still on that side. Vengeance, they killed us, we're gonna kill them 20 times more, 40 times more, etc. But now there's a growing number of people in Israel, not a monolith, growing number of people in Israel going, no, enough, okay? So now we're the bullies, this isn't right. And you have to not only end the war, you have to end the occupation.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the state of Oregon, because I think that this might be a harbinger of things to come. And it has to do with decriminalizing drugs and whether or not that was the right way to go.
It's the middle of the day in downtown Portland, Oregon.
You mind holding up for a second?
We're on a ride along with Portland Police Bike Squad.
All right, don't worry about that other thing, all right? You're just gonna take it today.
Block after block, foil, syringes, and used Narcan canisters litter the streets. The sight of open fentanyl use is inescapable.
Lawmakers in the state of Oregon are facing backlash as fentanyl overdoses reach record levels. Now, let me be clear, they're reaching record levels across the country, but some states are dealing with higher numbers of overdoses. So Democrats are now planning to reclassify some drug possession as low-level misdemeanors after passing a bill essentially decriminalizing personal possession of drugs in 2020. Now, I personally think that decriminalizing as opposed to legalizing and regulating is a terrible idea, and I think this is a perfect example. I'll explain what I mean in just a moment, but before I do, let's get to the details of this story. First, what did the original law do, the law that they're trying to roll back now? Well, back in 2020, Oregonians actually passed a ballot measure. It was ballot measure 110, making Oregon the first state to decriminalize the possession of small amounts of drugs. So instead of jail time, users were given, citations that amounted to about $100, and they were usually ignored. The second part of the measure basically aimed at increasing funding for rehabilitative centers, treatment centers, using money from cannabis taxes. But since its passage, Oregon has struggled to fully implement that critical aspect of the law. I'd like to know more about why that is, but it appears that that cannabis tax did not end up with the treatment centers that people struggling with addiction absolutely need. Now, Dr. Andrew Mendenhall, who's the CEO and president of a Portland-based nonprofit, says the following. The most recent studies are telling us that Oregon has about 50% of the treatment access or treatment capacity that it needs to meet the population health needs of Oregonians more broadly. And that's a problem. Especially with the fentanyl crisis becoming worse every year. The Oregon Health Authority now estimates that 5 Oregonians die every week from opioid-related overdoses. And just to give you a peek into just how bad the numbers have gotten, if you look at the numbers from 2019, Oregon had 280 unintentional opioid overdose deaths total. That 280 number exploded to 956 in 2022. So obviously the numbers keep rising, and the communities in Oregon are like, are we gonna do anything about this, or are we just gonna keep moving along as if there's nothing wrong with this? Now, it is true that fentanyl overdoses have spiked nationwide in the past few years, but Oregon is dealing with the largest increase of synthetic overdose deaths in the country and the 3rd highest of all overdose deaths, according to data from the CDC. And some Oregonians say Measure 110 is not doing enough to address the substance abuse crisis. Let's watch.
Under Oregon's Drug Addiction Treatment and Recovery Act, drugs are decriminalized statewide in an effort to instead help addicts with treatment.
Everyone has Narcan, $100 fine, smoking fentanyl in public, don't worry about that. And they're gonna either offer you treatment or at least pay the fine for you.
But calling the help hotline is voluntary, frustrating Portland law enforcement.
Put your hands behind your back.
They say without the threat of jail and fentanyl's addictiveness, there isn't a real incentive for people to seek treatment.
What sort of an impact has 110 had on what you do out on the street every day?
My full-time job is fentanyl, and basically all roads lead to fentanyl in downtown Portland.
Since Measure 110 took effect nearly 3 years ago, more than 6,000 citations have been filed, and 64% have been ignored.
People in these social services programs will say the process of putting someone in jail is part of the harm that they're trying to reduce.
There's no silver bullet here. We need to create rewards and consequences to motivate people to engage in treatment.
I tend to agree with that, but just one other note before I toss to you, Cenk, and then we'll get into what they're trying to change. 63% of voters support bringing back criminal penalties for drug possession while continuing to use cannabis taxes to fund drug treatment programs. And what they want to see changed is basically if you are doing drugs in public, which is a big problem, especially in a lot of these blue states, well, then you're gonna get more than just a citation, but you're gonna get the option of either entering a drug treatment facility or spending time behind bars. And so the idea is the disincentive of prison is going to encourage them to go to rehab instead.
Yeah, so first of all, when the money doesn't actually go to the drug treatment centers, people get super frustrated. Because it's one thing to say, hey, we wanna spend your money on folks who made wrong choices. Let's be honest about that. But let's all be humanitarians and do the right thing and the decent thing and help them. People go, okay, because we're good folks, right? But when you don't see the money show up there, then you get super mad.
And you lose trust in government.
Yes, and so that doesn't help Democrats either. And then who cares about helping the Democrats? The whole point is that theoretically that they then are going to do the right things. But if they don't do the right things, then what's the point? So okay, that's one part of it. But the major part here is 63% of Oregon. That's a very blue state. Yeah, there's red parts of it, no question. But look at how fed up Portland is. Portland is one of the bluest places in the whole country. There's a whole show called Portlandia about super libs in Portland, right? And even Portland has said, no mas, this is crazy. We can't take this anymore. And part of the point here is, or one of the points of emphasis is, you're not allowed to use it publicly anymore. Because you know why? Because people are sick of walking their kids to school, going to work themselves, taking the bus, and there's people doing drugs on the street, and you're worried to
Syringes
death.
everywhere, foil everywhere. Yeah, it is a problem.
Yeah.
It is a problem. So this is why I've always had a problem with just simply decriminalizing, because when you decriminalize, all you do is disempower law enforcement, and it's kind of like a more anarchy, libertarian-based model where it's like a hands-off approach. Whereas legalizing and regulating means, okay, if you're doing drugs in the comfort of your own home and you're not causing harm to the community, like who am I to tell you you can't do that? But if your behavior is harming the community and also it's not helping you, right? Like that's the other thing. In the past, there was an ability for law enforcement or members of the community to intervene, right? If someone has a really bad addiction, and it wasn't a perfect system. I do think that system needed reforms for sure, but it allowed for an opening for someone to intervene and give someone the option to detox and go through rehabilitation. Some people are so addicted, they're so far gone that they're unable to even make that decision for themselves. And if they are able to make that decision for themselves, rehab is so unbelievably expensive that they have a tough time accessing the treatment that they so desperately need. All I know is just simply decriminalizing has been a disaster, right?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go further than that, but look, pot in the comfort of your own home, everybody's in favor of that. So when we say drugs, the whole category doesn't make sense. Coffee is a drug, alcohol is a drug, pot's a drug. It's very, very different than meth or fentanyl, which are very dangerous. And then when you use it publicly, then you become a public danger to the entire community. So I don't agree with people on the left who say that crime is fictional, it's not real. The drug use is no big deal. Public drug use is no big deal. And the working class that's worried to death about it, about their safety, who cares about the working class? That's insanity. That's not anywhere near a progressive position. It just isn't. Some portions of the left have gone so far, they've done the horseshoe, and they are making libertarian right-wing positions of freedom for everyone, no matter who it hurts. So along those lines, where I get harsher is, no, if the citation is a joke. I mean, the 36% who paid it are suckers. There's no consequence for not paying it or for going to treatment. So what I think should happen is either you go to jail or you go to treatment. And it's mandatory. It is not anywhere near optional.
If you have committed a crime because of your addiction. So for instance, if you're doing smash and grabs to feed your drug addiction, no, you're not being criminalized for your addiction. You're being criminalized for the smash and grab. But if drug addiction is what's fueling that, then you should be given the option to get your life together, right?
Yeah, that's the humanitarian thing to do. We're saying, look, we don't just send them to prison, give them the option of treatment. But the option of treatment isn't an option versus nothing, it's versus prison. So you don't get to say, I like the option of not doing anything, even though I smashed into your car, took your stuff out of there while your baby was in there, but hey, that's your goddamn problem, etc. No, none of that makes any sense. Mandatory in both directions. And finally, what drives me crazy is that no one ever talks about plea bargains. Part of the reason they have to bring this back is because a lot of times the drug dealers were given a possession charge because they could have had a distribution charge, but they do a plea bargain to drop them to a possession, but at least give them some prison time, right? But when the prosecutors don't have that option anymore, they plea bargain to 0. So when you lower the penalties, there's no room to do a plea bargain, so everybody walks.
But there is no plea bargain in this scenario, the current situation right now, because it's not a crime. It's been decriminalized. So it's just a citation. If you don't pay the citation, all right, well, sad day for the city or for the state.
Yeah, so in the case of this particular law, they're talking about the users that are doing it publicly for fentanyl, et cetera. But I'm making the point about the folks that are even more dangerous, which is the drug dealers.
Yeah, the traffickers, yeah.
Right, and when you have the traffickers and you've lowered all the penalties, then again, you don't have room to do plea deals and they walk too. So that's why the people of Oregon and Portland are saying, we can't take it anymore. We've got to get back to sanity here.
So they haven't finalized what the legislation will be. We don't have the concrete details yet, but I do want to just quickly give you the details we do have at the moment. Let's go to graphic 4. The effort, if passed, would allow police to confiscate and punish the use of certain drugs in public places and parks. The changes could also make it easier to prosecute drug dealers and ease access to addiction treatment, proponents claim. While the specifics of the bill have not been finalized, personal use possession of drugs, except for cannabis and psychedelic mushrooms, would be punishable by up to 30 days in jail or a $1,250 fine. Misdemeanor charges for possession could be dismissed by attending a meeting with an addiction specialist. So the whole point is to basically push people with addiction into getting the help they need so they're no longer addicts. We'll see how it plays out. For now, though, we got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour, God, a lot of news to get to. One of my favorite stories of the day is just how pathetic Nancy Mace really is. Don't miss that story. We'll be right back.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this. You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Animals are innocent. Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here. This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Jank. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Garrett Vandenberg, and Kevin Eller. Garrett and Kevin, thank you so much for joining. They hit the join button below. TYT.com/join. Someone asked, how can they upgrade? TYT.com/join is a great way to upgrade. Director H gifted a membership on YouTube. We appreciate all you guys. Casper.
We've got an update on a former Trump advisor, Peter Navarro, and it's fun for us, not so fun for Navarro.
So what I'm going to do is say a few words, and I'm going to have several of these fine attorneys behind me say a few words. But the top line here is that... knock it off. Mr. Yeah. The top line here is that Mr. Woodward has already filed the appeal in this case.
They're sending him to jail. He's going to prison. That was Peter Navarro, Trump's former advisor, and he has been sentenced to 4 months behind bars for refusing to cooperate with the congressional investigation into January 6th. I gotta say, I didn't expect him to actually be sentenced to any time behind bars, but he refused to cooperate, he was subpoenaed, and apparently there are consequences to that. As you can see, he had a bit of a hard time addressing his situation today, thanks to all the protesters surrounding him, and it's not the first time that's happened. These press conferences he tries to hold usually end up that way, and it's pretty funny. Now, what he was convicted for, let's get to that. Navarro was convicted back in September on 2 counts of contempt of Congress, one for failing to produce documents related to the probe and another for skipping his deposition. He was also fined $9,500 for doing so. And for his defense, Navarro had insisted that Donald Trump invoked executive privilege to prevent him from needing to comply with the committee. Turns out that was not the case. The US District Judge Amit Mehta basically barred Navarro's defense attorneys from using that argument because the argument had no merit. Now, Mehta concluded that Navarro had not carried his burden in proving that Trump had formally asserted a privilege or a testimonial immunity that would have allowed his former aide to not even appear to answer the committee's questions. You can't just ignore subpoenas and then after the fact, after you have been charged with contempt of Congress, claim that you're protected by executive privilege. Immediately after Navarro was sentenced, his attorney filed an appeal. Mehta also, that's the judge, requested additional briefing on whether Navarro should be allowed to exhaust his appeals before serving his sentence. And last we checked, Trump had not yet commented on the sentence that Navarro is now having to deal with. So Cenk, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I love that justice is headed towards Navarro.
Justice is here. It's not just coming.
Well, yeah, I hear you on that. TYT.com/justice. But it's not quite here yet because there's appeals. So Steve Bannon also got sentenced to 4 months in prison, but he's appealing his case, so that's why he's out still doing his stupid show where he's telling everybody, oh, if Trump wins, we're gonna fire everybody in the government, we're gonna bring in shock troops, and basically doing a giant, ad for fascism. So these guys think that they're above the law, and in some ways they are, because Steve Bannon did this scam where he ripped off his own viewers to pretend to build a wall on the border, and then instead spent it on yachts, etc.
He just pocketed the money.
Yeah, and his co-conspirators were imprisoned, convicted and imprisoned, but Donald Trump gave him a pardon. So they're a bunch of criminal thugs, and they act together like this. I hope that they hurry through this process so that at least spend some time in prison. They should spend a lot more. Navarro should have been charged with insurrection. Navarro wrote a whole book about the fake elector plot where he was bragging about it. He's like, oh, then we had this great idea. Mike Pence was supposed to delay the proceedings. We had the riot, and then we were going to bring in the fake electors. And then in his book, he doesn't call them fake, but we have the memorandum saying that they are in fact fake electors. And then we were going to have the legislatures basically pretend that Trump had won when we know he didn't, etc. So I think convicting him on insurrection would be the easiest thing there is. You just admit Exhibit A, his own book. So this is the least of it. This is just for not testifying. They should get him on the actual substance of the crimes committed. And now his defense in this particular case is absurd. He says, well, I have executive privilege. Do you? Because Trump never said, he never asserted executive privilege here.
Oh my God.
So Trump at a bare minimum has to just say, yeah, sure, I would have given executive privilege to Navarro. Now that doesn't settle the case, but it is that the outer bounds of where executive privilege goes has not been determined yet by the Supreme Court. That's why it's considered an open question to some degree. And so that'll be very interesting to adjudicate. And I don't know if this case and the Bannon case will get to the Supreme Court. In a sense, I hope it does. But remember, whatever rules apply to Trump also apply to Biden and other Democratic presidents as well. But the bottom line is, for Navarro, he has no leg to stand on because Trump never said that he was using executive privilege here. So he had no reason not to testify. He just thought, I'm one of the elites. I don't have to listen to the authorities. Come to find out, he does.
So the only thing that I'll say to wrap this up is I just find it so amazing to watch all of these individuals who were part of the Trump administration, who were very friendly and close to Trump during his term, one by one suffering the consequences of associating themselves with Trump and carrying out whatever deeds Trump wanted them to carry out. And so if you didn't show your unwavering loyalty to Trump, he would completely destroy you among his supporters. I mean, just think about how Mike Pence is now treated. His political career for the most part is over. But if you do carry out the wishes of Donald Trump, chances are you're gonna eventually face some consequences for them, especially if he's asking you to do things that are unconstitutional or illegal. So I just think about all the different players who orbited Donald Trump throughout the years, including his personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. All these people end up in prison, or they end up getting completely crushed and trashed by Trump publicly, and then they deal with harassment from some MAGA supporters. Then I think about Tim Scott and how he's trying to ingratiate himself to Trump just so he can get that VP pick. I don't understand why anyone would want that job. I don't understand it because it seems pretty awful to me and it seems ill-fated.
Oh, I know why, because they're in politics, they're almost all Gollums. Precious power, precious.
But do you really have power serving Trump? Because that's what it is. It's just serving Trump and what his wishes are. That's not power.
Of course not. So it's and you're right. I should clarify. It's seeming power. What they're actually, and they know that they don't have any power. Power extends only to how much they can agree with Trump. The minute they disagree with Trump, they realize they have no power at all.
100%, right? Yep.
So what they're actually seeking is ego and status. I am the vice president of the United States. I'm so important. I'm such an important person. And guys, in our world, we think, what a loser Tim Scott is. What a pathetic loser all like Navarro and all these bootlickers are, right? But remember, in Washington, they don't view it that way at all. Like, if you're the vice president, it doesn't matter if you're a moron, you're the most evil guy in the world, they will all fall at your feet and be like, oh, the vice president is here, the most important person in the world. You don't understand how grovelingly pathetic all of Washington is. So like the senators that we think are a joke, they're treated as royalty in Washington. People kissing their ass 24/7 and like almost praying to them. So that's why the Tim Scotts of the world humiliate themselves going in that direction. But last things about this case. Look, whenever I see Trump, I think, how can anyone not see that this guy is the biggest narcissist bully you've ever seen in your life? But it takes a special kind of guy like the Navarros of the world to just look at a bully like that and think, that's my hero. I wish I could go to prison to defend that bully who picks on the weak. Oh, I love that guy. Really the most pathetic of all people. Finally, the fine is $9,500 to go along with the 4 months. The $9,500 doesn't seem like much, but don't worry about that, because the actual fine is that they have to defend themselves and pay lawyers to do that, which is gonna set them back
100%.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't imagine they could do district court, circuit court, and Supreme Court under $500,000. So at least Navarro and Bannon have to pay that as well. Well, Bannon will probably take it out of the suckers who gave him the money for the wall. Where's the wall, guys? Where's the wall?
Anyway, when we come back, an outrageous story involving an official attempting to bribe Carrie Lake. Was she bribable? That and more coming up.
Back on TYT, on YouTube Super Chat, Justice wrote in, somebody here just summoned me. I like that. And I like that your handle is Justice, way to be. Although you could change your handle to tyt.com/justice, which leads to links for buying my book. But anyways, all right, let's go to YouTube members. Sammy McCarm writes in, I'm a recovering addict. This topic is so complicated. Fentanyl is evil. Sammy, of course that's true, and super happy that you're recovering. Fentanyl is what you do when you're desperate and not in good shape at all. Well, and so the idea that these folks are making their decisions of their own volition. No, fentanyl is making the decision, right? That's my sense of it, yes.
So I was watching an interview with a recovering addict. I thought it was very enlightening, and she was talking about how, because of how cheap fentanyl is, basically everyone just kind of flocked to buying fentanyl over something like heroin, which is more expensive. And because of that, since like the market for heroin went down, you can't find it on the streets anymore. And I think heroin sounds and is very dangerous, but fentanyl is actually even more dangerous than heroin, right? And so it is a complicated situation. You know, people like to focus on the southern border, and I do think that there is some validity to the argument that we need to do a better job securing our border and preventing the smuggling of those drugs into our country. But there's also the demand, and I think that needs to be dealt with as well.
Yep. All right, Will73 writes in, this 18-year-old conscientious objector is amazing and heroic, 100% agree. Alpha Dog says about all of our politicians, I sure would like some more representation in exchange for my taxation.
Yes, totally agree.
Couldn't agree more with that. T. Freeman on the conscientious objector says, brave young man, totally agree with that as well. Moonlit Cat Dragon, thank you for joining, we appreciate you. Now I'm going to Twitch. Bezos Bucks Dragon writes in, how do we name our price if we're already members? I want to increase my membership to $15 a month. A, you're awesome. B, tyt.com/join. At our website, you could pick the price that you want, including $15. So tyt.com/join. Thank you. This is a good quote. Osborne wrote in, once again, a quote from Grand Theft Auto 4 is fitting perfectly. War is when the young and stupid are tricked by the old and bitter into killing each other. Unfortunately, that sounds pretty accurate. Now we go to our members on tyt.com. Jay, the okiest mailman, writes in, I live in Portland. I see people on drugs daily. It's bad. Yep, you're not alone, brother. That's why a lot of people said that. Zide Girl says about the conscientious objector, put him on your Turk of the Year list. I also agree with that. All right, we'll be back. Cenk, Anna, TYT News.
This next story really shows you the divide within the GOP because it involves one faction of the GOP trying to do away with the other faction of the GOP. It's just that illegal bribes might have been involved, so let's talk about it.
Is there a number at which
I can be bought?
not be bought?
That's what it's about.
You can take a pause for a couple of years.
No.
And then go right back to what you're doing.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. A billion, no. This is not about money. This is about our country.
A pretty explosive story is brewing, something that broke by the Daily Mail. They released a recording of a 10-minute-long conversation between Arizona Senate candidate Kari Lake and Arizona Republican Party Chair Jeff DeWitt, who can be heard offering Lake a bribe to stay out of politics, get lost, scram, just for a few years. Now, since the audio was released, there's been a huge firestorm of controversy, and DeWitt has even resigned from his position as a result. But it is important to note that this recording wasn't from a recent interaction. That piece of information, that fact is important to think about as I give you more details to the story. So Kari Lake says that the conversation took place on February 28th of last year, many months before Lake had announced her intention to run for the Senate. And she seemingly referenced the incident on March 4th of 2023 during a speech at CPAC. Let's watch.
Something happened to me this week before I left for CPAC, and it shows how desperate these people are to stop me and to silence you. I decided to share this. It's a little bit controversial, but I'm going to put this out. Somebody showed up at my door this week. They called me before and said, I got to talk to you in person. This can't be done over the phone, which is always kind of like, uh-oh, what's that going to be about? They came to my door and they tried to bribe me out of getting out of politics. It's really happened. I'm telling you this because this is how disgusting politics is. So this person standing before me was sent at the request of some powerful people back east. They want me out of politics. All we're asking for you to do is to get out of politics for 2 years.
So just to reiterate, the conversation where she was bribed someone attempted to bribe her, DeWitt did, was February 28th of last year. Then on March 4th, she gives that speech. And then in October of 2023, she announces that she's running for a Senate seat. And we have more from DeWitt, his perspective on this story in just a moment. But Cenk, what is going on here?
Yeah, so huge context here that's really important. First of all, she said in that clip you just saw, this guy shows up at my house and blah, 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 as if she doesn't know him. No, they've been friends for a long time.
Good friends, yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, he's hired her many times before. So he's talking to her about, hey, I could arrange for you to get hired again. So Kari, tell us about the other times you were hired by DeWitt and what was that for? So that's interesting. Number two, like a lot of people are painting her as a hero. She rejected a bribe and you heard it with your own ears. wait, why did you hear it with your own ears? Oh, that's because she was mic'd, and she knew she was mic'd. So what would she have said if she wasn't mic'd? We'll never know. But she knew she was mic'd, and so she's like, well, I would never, not for 10 million or 20 million. Did you get that? Did you get that into the mic? Okay.
Yeah, there's something so shady and manipulative about that. But look, let me just be clear. Based on what we know and based on how the story looks, there could be more information coming out in the coming days and weeks, and I might change my opinion. But based on what we know right now, no, you don't bribe someone to stay out of politics. Like that's
not the question.
Insanely gross. But I feel like both parties here are insanely gross.
100%. I don't want anybody to get confused. What it did is terribly wrong and really interesting. It's an insight into how politics actually works.
100%.
So the powerful people back east, they're obviously donors, and probably from Wall Street. So I don't know if you know this, but private equity guys run the whole country. Okay, so, and by the way, for all you nuts out there, no, they're not in one religion or background. They're in every kind of religion, every kind of ethnic background. The uniting factor is dollars.
Cold hard cash.
Yes, and so why do they want her out of politics for 2 years? Because they want to make sure that they win the seat for Republicans, so they'll have more deregulation and tax cuts. That's why. It's not complicated at all. It's not that they view her as like dangerous to their interests. They just view her as dangerous to winning that seat for Republicans. And they know that the Republicans are reliably sellouts and they will do whatever a donor tells them to. And they're worried that Kari Lake's gonna blow this from. Not that she wouldn't do the same thing. It's just they're worried she's not going to win. That's the difference.
Yeah, and look, I think moneyed interests know that they've, at this point, pretty much captured both parties. There's a lot of corruption on the Democratic side as well. They might see Kari Lake as a weak candidate for that Senate seat, so sure, that's a possibility. Kari Lake has also, decided to side with the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. And I do know that, moneyed interests, especially these billionaire donors, have been doing everything they can to prop up any other candidate other than Trump, because they see Trump as someone who is unstable to a system that has been very favorable to them.
Yeah, but I want to be clear about that. They have layers, these donors. So some of the donors are already pro-Trump. They're like, I don't care. And in fact, some of them are saying now, look, a dictatorship type of government is more reliable for the markets than a democracy is. Democracy is very unstable. So those are the guys that are already totally team Trump. Then there's the guys who think, look, we got a good thing going here. We got corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats who control 90% of both parties. And so what am I gonna mess around with Trump? Because Trump is-
He's destabilizing.
Yeah, he's A, destabilizing, and B, he doesn't just do what he's told. He first looks out for his own interests. Whereas the dogs we have, like Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell, and yes, the Democratic leaders too, they do exactly as they're told. So it's not that they're worried about Trump because he's so honest. No, they're like, we don't like that he puts his own corruption above our corruption. And finally, the last group of donors are say, well, look, I don't like that he's unstable and puts himself above us, but better than a Democrat or better than not even close to a progressive or an honest one. That's the worst.
Yeah,
right?
we're talking about Arizona, exactly. Yeah. That's not even a consideration.
Yeah, so they're like, so the worst case scenario is someone who isn't a Republican winning or a corporate Democrat. So yeah, we can live with Trump. We don't want Trump, we'd rather have a dog, but if Trump's gonna feed himself first, then feed us, we still got plenty of money to make that happen.
So with that context in mind, let's move on to another clip from this recording. So here's DeWitt speaking in pretty vague terms about something Cenk referenced earlier, which is the people back east who want Lake on the team while Lake resists.
This is back east. There are very powerful people that want to keep you out.
Oh no, they do.
But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. In a big way. So, this conversation never happened.
This is crazy though. They should want me. I'm a great candidate. People love me. These people are corrupt.
Well, maybe you're right.
They are right. They are corrupt.
Maybe. This is rap. Don't go. Do me a favor though. I don't get myself in trouble. If you say no, which is fine, it's your choice. Don't tell people.
They're gonna try to have me murdered. They don't own me, and it pisses me off.
Yeah, I said I know it's about ownership.
It's about control.
I don't know it's about control. It's about being on the team.
So DeWitt then goes on to explain more about this offer. So first it's kind of vague and then he gets a little more specific. He specifically notes that she would get a well-paying opportunity, a position, if you will. Let's listen.
So what do they want? What do they want me to do?
They want you to stay out for 2 years. So the ask I got today from back east was, it has to stay between us. Is there any companies out there or something that could just put her on the payroll and give her, to keep her out? And I said, well, what do you want them to do? Like, whatever we need to do.
This is about defeating Trump. And I think that's a bad thing for our country. DeSantis is not America first. This is about the final death blow to Trump. And I don't think that's good for our country.
And you know I love Trump. I love Trump.
It's not good for our country, Jeff.
It's not, but at the same time, I'm not even sure Trump can win again. I don't know that he can win again. I think what it really comes down to for a lot of people, it's not really about like control or agenda, it's just about the ability to raise money to win.
Ability to raise money to win, interesting. Now look, to Kari Lake's credit, she's recording this, so it's hard to say to her credit because it seems like she's using this as an opportunity to, have some content that she can use to her advantage once she's running for the Senate. But we'll get to that in a moment. In the recording, the rest of the recording, she refuses the offer and says that she's going to do what she wants to do. And so we're gonna get his statement, DeWitt's statement. Actually, let me just go to that real quick. So the press reached out to him for comment. As I mentioned, he stepped down from his position. I said things I regret, but I realized when hearing Lake's recording that I was set up. I believe she orchestrated this entire situation to have control over the state party. And it's obvious from the recording that she crafted her performance responses with the knowledge that she was recording it, intending to use this recording later to portray herself as a hero in her own story. I received an ultimatum from Lake's team: resign today or face the release of a new, more damaging recording. I'm truly unsure of its contents, but considering our numerous past open conversations as friends, I have decided not to take the risk. I am resigning as Lake requested in the hope that she will honor her commitment to cease her attacks. I wonder what kind of dirt she has on him because Jesus Christ, he's definitely scared.
Yeah, so there's two things. First of all, they're both terrible people. Let's not get it twisted. So DeWitt, I think that's so hilarious when he's like, well, I've said much worse things to her, so I'm going to resign because I don't know what's on those tapes. And by the way, Jeff, I got news for you. She's gonna release him anyway, okay? You're a sucker. So she has no morals at all. And you thought she was your friend, you were paying her all this time, etc. No, she set you up. And in the reporting, they explained that at one point she was talking to people on the other end of the mic. So it's not just being recorded, she knows other people are listening at the time. So she cannot say yes, because there are people that are outside listening to that conversation. So she has to say, oh my God, I am so upset about this. And I think this is an attack against Donald Trump. I will say no.
Yeah, that part was so obvious, right? It was obvious that she was creating something she could use as a tool during her campaign. And I think that the fact that this conversation took place nearly a year ago in February of 2023 and it wasn't released until recently, why did it take a year for this to be released?
Okay, so no question, and Kari Lake doesn't care about friends. These kind of politicians are the worst people on earth. They'll betray anyone for a slight advantage, but she betrayed DeWitt, who deserved all the betraying. So I got no sympathy for him either. So now, okay, but the most important part of the story, guys, is Does money control things in politics? Of course. Look at what he's saying. Remember all the stories we told you here on the Young Turks? When a politician gets a very well-paying job, which they don't know anything about, like, oh, here, Eric Cantor all of a sudden is on the board of a giant financial institution. He doesn't know anything about finance, right? But he served for all those years getting tax cuts and deregulation for Wall Street, so now he gets that job. So we told you that's the kind of thing that happens. You just heard it with your own ears. Is there a company we could place her with that's a friendly company? That's how politics works, okay? And then you heard him say, look, it's about being on the team. And on the Democratic side, you will also hear that all the time. Hey, be a good team player. That means don't bother with pointing out corruption and trying to work for the average person. We don't do that. The team works for the big finance guys who pay all of us off. So that's what American politics is. Wall Street buying all of our politicians.
So that's it, that's the story. There's a little bit more, but go read the original reporting if you'd like to see it over at the Daily Mail. It is a tabloid, but obviously they have the goods. It was leaked to them. But when we come back, we'll get into that Nancy Mace story that I had referenced earlier. So Congresswoman Nancy Mace, I guess today's show is just wall-to-wall narcissists who just want to engage in stunts to further their political careers. That's what you're gonna get from Mace. Stick around.
All right, back on TYT. Let me read a couple of YouTube members and we'll go back up top. Human Without Borders says, I swear being here with TYT gives me hope in my hopeless world. Thank you, TYT. Thank you, brother. You're a member or sister, I don't know. And you guys make TYT possible, so thank you. Screed Hart says, I was given Oxy for an injury. It was so good. So glad my doctor wouldn't give me any more. That is the #1 way that people get into addiction and destroy their lives. So thrilled that your doctor showed restraint and principle there. Josman Quetzalcoatl Dragon says, I've lost several friends to heroin, 100%. Deviant Peanut, which already is funny, says, we the people have more power than we realize. They just don't want us to know that. If we unite and organize on issues we can all agree on, amazing things can happen. Man, I couldn't agree more with that. The trick is how to organize, right? And so believe me, here I personally and at TYT have tried organizing people in 1,000 different ways, and we're gonna keep on trying until we win. So I love that attitude. All right, let's go to our members. Over 9,000 writes in, thanks Anna for allowing excessive comments today. We love you all. Is she not merciful? Dragon with a girl tattoo says, prisons sound better than killing unarmed civilians, including women and children. A simple choice, the right choice. It's referring to the conscientious objector in Israel. And I couldn't agree more with that. If you said to me, you have to go and kill those 2, 12, 42 innocent people or go to prison. That's a no-brainer. Of course I'm gonna go to prison.
Agreed.
Yeah, and the correct number is 1. I'm not gonna kill 1 innocent person. And so I wish a lot more people would do that in Israel. That guy's totally heroic. Kyle CH writes in, quote, well, it looks like Anna's going right wing. And then adds sarcasm, okay, and says, if we don't point out when there are issues with left or progressive policies, we can't fix or improve them. Thank you for covering this, referring to the Oregon story.
Oh my God, what was his name? Her name?
Kyle,
Their
Kyle
name?
CH.
Kyle. I love you, Kyle, you get it, you get it. I love you. And I think you're actually representative of most people on the left. So thank you for saying that and giving me hope in humanity.
Yeah, of course. Look, it's the same thing we say about America. Not criticizing it doesn't make any sense. You do constructive criticism to make America better, right? Same thing with progressives and the left. So imagine if progressives are the ones that say we should improve America by doing constructive critique, right? Not by just staying where we are. So, but when it comes to left-wing policies, they say, no, stay where we are, don't question it. That makes no sense at all. It's the opposite of being progressive. So, all right, and then Plastic Brick Dragon has some nice things to say about how Michael conducts the MAGA interviews, which you should check out on our YouTube channel. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. And Samir, thanks for joining, brother. We appreciate you. Anna.
Let's talk about Nancy Mace, who, man, this story is bad. It's embarrassing. If true, these are allegations made by former staffers. Now, Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who recently endorsed Donald Trump for president, allegedly wanted to get punched in the face by MAGA supporters during the January 6th riots, so that she could become the face of anti-Trump Republicans and also have a legitimate or, credible reason for why she's so against Trump. Now, according to 3 sources who heard the comments firsthand, Mace used these exact words. She wanted to go get punched in the face. Now, one former aide told the Daily Beast, she literally begged us to let her leave the office and head to the floor so she could get punched in the face and get media attention. That's word for word what she requested. So I just wanted to note that we're getting one side of the story, and you're getting one side of the story from former aides and staffers. There might be elements to this story that we are not privy to as a result of that. And I have personally seen certain pieces by the Daily Beast that were, let's just say, dishonest and were meant to smear certain people. I'm giving you that warning because I don't know what the truth is here. This is what 3 different sources who are close to her are alleging, but.
Yeah, so this is in other places too, but you're right to come in with that heavy warning. And Daily Beast's #1 go-to move whenever they want to attack a progressive or a Republican is office rumors.
Yes.
Right.
Totally.
So that's
they love the office rumors.
Because it's so easy. You just have to find one disgruntled person or a couple of disgruntled people for whatever reason, right? And then have them go, oh, you wouldn't believe it.
And everyone's disgruntled at work. It's work. It's like the easiest story to break. Just find some colleague or an employee who's like especially disgruntled and loose-lipped, and you'll get a story.
Okay, I don't know if he meant to do this, but Skip is our director today. And when Anna said, everyone's disgruntled at work, he gave like a big thumbs up. I don't care, it's a reporter's called Skip.
No, don't tell the Daily Beast, okay? Anyway.
Okay, hold on, I want to say something about Nancy Mace. So we're gonna get to her flip-flops on Trump, which are hilarious. But I'm gonna shock the world here, she gets it. Okay, that whole thing about getting punched in the face makes a lot of sense in modern day politics. So getting the punch in the face is the unfortunate part, but she's not wrong that A, it would have gotten her a ton of media attention, B, media attention is a currency of politics, and C, it would have greatly increased her grassroots fundraising. So this is now, politics is all about getting media attention, and the right wing understands that so much better than the left wing or the Democrats do. And everyone on the right wing now has podcasts.
It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, but that's the reality of today, and it's the reality of politics overall. Politics is all about branding. What is your brand? And do people know your name, i.e. your brand, right? And do they associate something positive with it? So Nancy Mace has been trying to get her name in the news every single day, literally, that we have a part of that in this story as well. And honestly, it's logical. The problem with the right wing is they use it for just their own selfish greed and corruption, etc. But if you got that media attention and then use it to help people, that would be amazing. But that hasn't happened yet, outside of maybe Bernie Sanders.
So she allegedly felt that getting punched in the face by one of the January 6 rioters would lend credence to her lack of support toward Donald Trump. The source continued that there were several of us in the office who heard it, and she had been in office for 3 days, if that tells you anything about her motivation. So now Mace ultimately ended up backing off the idea of getting punched in the face. She got some pushback from her staff. And when the Washington Post asked Mace for comment, she didn't directly address the episode, but said this, "What you write doesn't pass for real journalism," which makes me think that maybe what they're alleging is true.
Yeah, of course.
Like, why not just address the allegations?
Yeah, look, Klobuchar was tough on her staff, right? And Nancy, this story is originally from the Washington Post. It rings very true, right? So yes, sometimes, like when they attack Marianne Williamson on the Office drama, nonsense. Kai's such a, I mean, I can give you many other examples, but when they do it to progressives, it's almost always horse crap, right? So rare occasion you'll see one guy, oh yeah, okay, that he actually did do that, etc., and that's bad. But 9 out of 10 times, it's just a smear job to help the establishment. But in this case, it looks like they got the goods on. There are 3 different sources, and again, it started originally from the Washington Post.
Yeah.
So, and you can tell from her appearances too. And they say she wants to be in the news every single day.
Right.
She wants either a daily appearance on television or for people to be talking about her.
Oh yeah, that sounds so awful. Being a politician sounds like the worst. I get that they enrich themselves and become tremendously wealthy by trading individual stocks based on insider information, which should be illegal, but it's not, because we live in a super corrupt, disgusting country run by a disgusting government, not a disgusting country. But yeah, like I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
But okay, let's get to her flip-flops.
Okay, before we do though, just one other thing that came out in the reporting. So apparently in a strategy memo that she wrote in 2021, just after the Capitol insurrection that she repeatedly expressed had troubled her greatly, she described herself as the freshman thought leader on federal issues, officially dubbing herself National Nancy.
That's hilarious.
I think that's the most incriminating thing in all of this, okay? Like, who nicknames themselves?
Well, unless you're doing it like Muhammad Ali did, with like a smile on your face, like with a wink.
You're not being super serious about it.
Yeah,
you're having fun.
Yeah, you're doing it with a wink. You're doing it sarcastically. You're having fun with it, right? But if you come in and go, I am now National Nancy. I want everybody to call me National Nancy.
What does that even mean though? Like that
it's like the worst nickname too.
Okay. Now, despite initially condemning Trump on the Hill and in the press, it was reported in October that Mace has been privately suggesting to her Republican colleagues that she may have an actual shot at being Trump's vice president.
What?
Despite the fact that one source close to the former president said he absolutely hates Nancy Mace. Her staff handbook also illustrates how focused she is on getting media attention, and that, of course, is what Cenk was referencing earlier. Aides are expected to send out at least one press release and book the Congresswoman and book the Congresswoman on one television show daily, which is more than what most Congress people do. And a former Mace staffer said this: "It is not normal for a member to prioritize media and comms over actual legislation like that. In my experience with her and in other offices, comms serves to promote what the member is doing legislatively. In Mace's office, legislation served to get her more media opportunities."
Yeah, but look, that's the one where I go.
You love media, like you love media.
No, I do, and I'll tell you why, guys.
I hate it.
No. It's ironic because we do media together.
I know, I like doing my media. I like doing my show. Like media requests make me so miserable.
I love them. Keep them coming.
I know.
Okay, so here's why. Because you want to get your message to more people, different people. And so in her case, like if I was in Congress, I would do the same thing as her, except use it for good. Would I tell the staff, get me an interview every day? Of course I would. Why? Because I'd be fighting for things like paid family leave, higher minimum wage, etc. And when I get on there, I would find a way to say something that was put it in a way that's controversial enough, but is actually surrounds an issue that is very, very popular, so that you can get more attention to that issue so that you can have it passed. Now, she doesn't care about legislation, but to be fair to Nancy Mace, neither does anybody else in Congress.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So it's just media attention for media attention's sake. And that's also the reason why, rather than passing legislation, much needed legislation, like the migrant crisis that Republicans purport to care so deeply about, they won't pass legislation on it. They're purposely serving as obstructionists because they want to allow for Trump. I just read a really interesting piece on this. They want to give Trump that issue to campaign on. Yeah. So they're intentionally serving as obstructionists in passing much needed immigration reforms just to do a little favor for Donald Trump so he can increase his chances of defeating Joe Biden. But look, wall-to-wall nonsense. And this isn't just indicative of the Republican Party. I see it with Democrats too. They love the media attention. They love to hold hearings, because when you're holding hearings, you're not actually legislating and you're not doing anything to govern the country and serve the best interests of your constituents. You know that the media is gonna cover the hearings. It gives you a moment to get a good soundbite in, and then you get more attention for that. And that gives you the illusion of governance. In reality, they do nothing. And it really upsets me. Yeah, it really does.
Last two things on it. So think about the second half of Biden's term. So the Republicans win the House. And I told you guys, the minute they won the House, I said they will do absolutely nothing going forward in Congress. And then the mainstream press had these nonsense conversations about what the Republican agenda was, what could Biden get done. I'm just like, they're not even gonna try. What are you guys talking about? Don't you know anything about politics? And you know what's happened since then? Sorry, but I was 100% right. They haven't even tried. There were a bunch of Republicans, we showed it to you earlier in the week, yelling at the House going, aren't we going to try to pass any bills? Now they want right-wing bills passed. They're not even trying for that, right? And the Democrats, they don't want to pass anything. So the minute the Republicans won the House, Biden had a party. He's like, yes! Because he didn't want to pass paid family leave and higher minimum wage and all those things that he promised. If he wanted to, he would have tried in his first 2 years. He absolutely positively does not want those things passed. So when the Republicans won, it's a perfect excuse. So the Democrats are proposing nothing, and the Republicans are proposing nothing. So that's why they've all had these stupid, dumbass hearings, because they don't want to get anything done. Because you know why? Their donors love the status quo. If you're already at the top, you don't want to change anything. That's why you love the status quo. And all of them represent the people at the very, very top.
Right, and so while they're enjoying their positions at the very, very top, and while they use their positions of power to enrich themselves through trading individual stocks, taking bribes, all of that, what do you think is happening to the rest of the country? Why do you think you have a growing American population that thinks that we're headed toward a civil war? Or, more importantly, a growing percentage of Americans who think maybe democracy really ain't all that it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, you know why?
They're destroying the country. Like, they don't realize, maybe they do realize it and they don't care. I have no idea what's in their hearts and minds. What I do know is who they look out for first and foremost is themselves. As the rest of the country wastes away, as everything continues to deteriorate, I'm so angry about it because, again, I feel like we're headed for an iceberg, especially when it comes to the growing body of Americans who want a civil war and don't believe in democracy. And it's misplaced anger. I understand the anger, I feel the anger. We have to change the laws pertaining to our members of Congress to ensure that there's accountability there and that their jobs are seen as and acted upon as public servants. But that's not happening right now.
Yeah, so look, why don't people want to support democracy as much as they have in the past in American history? Because they're like, what democracy? So if you're an average person, you're like, well, I want all these different things that are, and I've listed all the polls for you guys. Dozens of proposals are over 2/3 of Americans. We all agree, almost all economic issues. and they never ever get it. So they're going, if this is what you call democracy, then I hate it. But it isn't. They perverted democracy because the Supreme Court legalized bribes. And the media never tell you about it. That's why I get so frustrated at the media. The number one most important thing that decides politics is money, and the media never talk about money. It's a total joke. Just like Nancy Mace, who's also a joke, who's flip-flopped on Trump now 3 or 4 different times. I hate him, I love him, I hate him, I love him. Now she's trying to be his VP after criticizing him before. Total, utter fraud. In the bonus episode,
Casey DeSantis likes to travel in private jets because traveling commercial is pretty miserable. So I don't know why it's a big deal.
Well, the amount of money is an amazing fact. So tyt.com/join, we'll see you there.